Hello, hello. Today we got our tight end ranking video with everything you need to know from 1 to 20. The second half of August, hopefully more YouTube videos coming. This first half has been a little slow, but everything else has been ridiculously busy. Draft guide is out though now, a lot of other things freeing up in life. So more videos to come. But today we're sticking to tight ends, and 1 to 3 for me is not only their own tier. I feel like that's a little rude to say that it's just the tier 1 because the difference between 3 and 4 is insane to me, even more than ADP would suggest. So those top 3 guys for me, McBride over Bowers. It is extremely close though. Bowers at 2 and then Kittle. All those guys I like, and in general, very close. So number 1, Trey McBride. Why is he a number 1 guy? In short, one of the safest players in fantasy. Not only does he have the ridiculous volume, but nothing has really changed there. I talked a little bit about this with Jamar Chase. The quarterback's the same. The play caller is the same. The volume should be the same, as there's not really any additions in that offense. The defense, probably the same. The things that can change is touchdowns, which there are signs pointing to that. So not only is it a ridiculous floor where he's basically been the tight end 1 already, he has room to improve. I love it overall there. If we look back from when Kyler returned from his injury, I think mid-2023 was when he came back. Since that point, Trey McBride has been the overall tight end 1 with like 3 touchdowns scored. So if we look at, is that going to change? Well, he is number 3 among tight end in red zone targets per route. So he's getting the work down there. It just hasn't really worked out in his favor yet. And then we look at the end zone targets. He had 9 last season. That's really good. That's like top 5. He only scored on 1 of them. So example, Mark Andrews is like the opposite of this. He had 9 end zone targets as well. He scored all 9, which is way too much, but both of them should kind of balance right in the middle there, around that 4 to 5, which is the average. I think last year, tight ends scored about 48% of their end zone targets. So if we got 10 this year for McBride and he had 5 touchdowns, great. And there's other areas that he could get more touchdowns too. It's not just that. So last year, we look at a stat in terms of the touchdowns over expected. So compared to your usage, where it is on the field, all that, how many touchdowns on average are NFL players scoring? He was at negative 5.3, which means that he just scores 0, just the average player. Not a good player, not a bad player, but just 0 touchdowns over expected. He would have had 17.5 points per game as a tight end. That is like Travis Kelce numbers when he was in his prime in like 2020. And that's what we're getting. And it's a very safe volume, 9.2 targets per game last year. That is not only just first among tight ends, that is 7th in the NFL. 9.2 targets. It's very safe. The coaching is still going to be the same. He fits Kyler's style really well. It's kind of the opposite of Marvin Harrison Jr. It's going to be a lot of short throws, a lot of yards to catch opportunities, and hopefully that red zone work actually pays off this year. That's why he's my number 1 guy this year. Right next, Brock Bowers. It's still amazing. I think people are really excited because it's Brock Bowers. He's a more fun player than Trey McBride, I would say. He's a rookie going into his sophomore year after dominating, kind of paying off the expectation of super high expectations, and he was even better. So we love it. Overall, it's pretty positive. Last year, what were the problems? Well, he didn't score many touchdowns as well. He was 6th lowest in that percent of his points per game coming from touchdowns. So that's what can improve here, is this offense and this coaching staff should be way better for him in terms of his efficiency. He is the best in the NFL. I probably second, Kittle. In terms of that yards after catch efficiency, making plays when he has the ball in his hand, and they're going to do that a lot with him. And his quarterback play was not just bad, it was horrible. Both of them were bottom 3 guys in accuracy last year. Where Geno Smith, he's not perfect, but his accuracy, insanely good and insanely efficient. We look back, like DK's always having one of the highest accurate balls downfield on a consistent basis. JSN, similar, which would be more of a role that Brock Bowers will be in this year. But it's just going to be a lot better quarterback play overall, which is why I like it so much for Brock Bowers. The downside is his volume was not only good last year, it was amazing. We love that, but it could change. So that's the one worry, is why I don't have as my overall tight end 1, is I think those two kind of equal each other out. Maybe a little bit better in terms of his efficiency will be better this year. His volume a little bit worse, but overall a better player. Why do I think that? Is because Chip Kelly and Pete Carroll, mainly Chip Kelly offenses, they don't throw a ton. Basically every year that he was an NFL coach, they were bottom 12 in passing attempts. He's going to be one calling the plays here. And when we look at Brock Bowers, he had 50 more routes than any other tight end last year. So not only did he have 100 more air yards, 50 more routes, but just the volume in general compared to any other tight end or any other person on his team, it was extremely high. So it wasn't the greatest volume at times, But in terms of just being on the field and constantly being targeted downfield, it was pretty consistent. So I don't think it'll be as much as his rookie year, but still obviously good enough to make him a top 3 guy. I think he's a lock there as well. And George Kittle, a close third. I'm kind of surprised that he's not going higher, which is weird to say because McBride and Bowers, I love them. But when you're looking at ADP, Kittle's like 10 spots in the total rankings behind those two guys. He was the number one guy last year in terms of points per game. If you take out that week 18 where he barely played, and we're not playing fantasy anyway, so who cares? He was that number one guy. He has always been the best guy in terms of efficiency. That points per game over expected stat, he's been number one 4 straight years. His yards per target is number one every single year. His yards after catch per reception, number one every single, like nothing is really changing in terms of how good of a player he is. So the two factors that we have to look at, one is CMC is back. And historically with CMC in these 3 years, he has been pretty significantly worse with CMC, both his volume, the big one, which running backs and tight ends we know are negatively correlated in terms of targets. When you have a running back that is getting a lot of passing work, it usually means less for the tight end. So that saw true with George Kittle, and with it, his production goes down. The thing is, last year, say when that happened to a pretty big impact, pretty big effect, was those 3 games that CMC was in there. They also had Debo and Ayuk and Juwan Jennings. And now Jennings, the contract, the injury, who knows? Pearsall's constantly injured too. Brandon Ayuk is out for at least 6 games, probably more, and at least ramping up after that. And then Debo is gone. So yes, CMC is being added in there, but who do they have at receiver? Like there's not many other options. And when you have George Kittle, he's not a guy that needs a ton of targets. He does not have the volume that's even close to a McBride or a Brock Bowers. But it hasn't mattered in years past. And if we look at his points per game rank and talking about ceiling and safety, since 2018, it's not like the last 3 years. 2018, tight end 3, tight end 2, tight end 3, tight end 4, tight end 2, tight end 6, and then tight end 1 and tight end 1. Like he's been a top guy basically every year for going on 7 years, 8 years in a row now. So that's what's making the drop off between tight end 3 and tight end 4 me so big. When doing my rankings this year, tight end compared to quarterback, running back, or receiver, it was the biggest difference compared to the average draft position of where these guys are going, which is surprising because it's usually the opposite, if anything, for tight end because there's not many good ones, and a lot of the good ones are kind of repeating over and over and over as those top 5 guys. It's not as hard to rank. But this year changed. That tight end 4 to tight end 7 range for me, I hate them all. That's just the truth. The tight end 4 in ADP, I looked at him, I was like, I kind of hate this guy. Tight end 5, not very good. Tight end 6, oh, maybe even worse. And tight end 7, definitely the worst of the bunch. So my tight end 4 in my rankings this year, basically by default, is Mark Andrews because he has the best hope of kind of getting that ceiling back, in my opinion. Because all he has to do is get healthy. And we saw this in 2024 Tony Pollard. They had the same injury a year apart, basically. So Tony Pollard, 2023, he got hurt, broke his leg, came back in 2023. And then first half of the year, sucked. Everyone agreed that he was horrible. They wanted nothing to do with him. Second half of 2023 was actually pretty solid. Solid level RB2, looked healthy, produced well. Same thing with Mark Andrews. First half of 2024, he was garbage. Second half of 2024, he was kind of the same as his old self, at least on a per snap basis. He became the tight end 8 because he got super lucky. He led the position in touchdowns per game, even though his volume did not reflect that. So if you take out the touchdowns, he's tight end 28 last year. But in that second half of the year, his fantasy points per route, number 1. His yards per route, to the 10th decimal point, was the exact same as it was in 2023, in the second half of 2024. So as he got healthier, he played a lot better. And hopefully that missed tackles that he creates a bunch of in 2023 and before that comes back because it got cut in half like twice. It was like a third of the amount last year. So hopefully his efficiency comes back, that volume gets a little bit better with it because he's going to have to make up for those touchdowns if that offense isn't number 1 and a ton of those touchdowns are going to him compared to his volume. But I have faith that that volume comes back a little bit. His route rate jumped by 14% in that second half of the year. He gets a little more production everywhere else to kind of be that mid-level tight end 1 again. That next guy is David Njoku, who's kind of the opposite of that. He had a decent amount of touchdowns, but it was because he's led the NFL in end zone targets, or at least the position, in back-to-back years, which is overly impressive because the Browns suck. And then last year, he played 11 games. He led the position in end zone targets on 11 games. So yes, the Browns quarterback situation is rough right now, and it's not too much different from 2024. But one of the big worries for me with Jerry Jeudy in that same situation is he was insanely good with Jameis Winston, 21 points per game. And then without him, he had 9 points per game. Njoku averaged 15 points per game with Jameis Winston. But without him, he averaged 15 points per game. There wasn't much different. So yeah, the quarterback situation sucks, but because of his play style, because he's being targeted short, and a lot of that yardage is coming from after the catch, and a lot of those points are coming because of his touchdown or his end zone target, red zone target volume, and getting those touchdowns. He has a better potential for me than, say, a Jerry Jeudy or the average tight end that's in this kind of bad situation. Cleveland loves him there. That other guy with David Njoku that I have above that tight end 4 to 7 ADP range is Evan Engram. I think that people quickly forget nowadays in fantasy and in life in general. It was just one season ago that Evan Engram had the second most receptions all time by a tight end. In 2023, he's the overall tight end one by 17 points when we're not counting those touchdowns, which again, I know touchdowns are one of the most important things for a fantasy tight end. I'll get into that later. But we go from a year where he was pretty average, he got hurt, to now, what's his new situation? Well, Denver paid him a ton of money to play with their amazing quarterback coaching combo for his specific play style. They throw the ball a ton, and it's a lot of short, quick throws, which is what Evan Engram is best at. And you look at his competition, he's going from an offense that had Brian Thomas Jr., Christian Kirk, now adding Travis Hunter, to a team that kind of just has Courtland Sutton, who's a downfield, lower volume, deep threat receiver. That's fine. That's actually the perfect guy to be with and a perfect room to be with. His volume can be insane. And if we look at the Sean Payton touchdowns in the past for tight ends, he had Jimmy Graham, which was always incredible for a really long time. Since then, it's been about 5 or 6 years, and it's been a bunch of no-name tight ends, guys that you probably wouldn't even recognize their name as a tight end one for the Broncos or Saints offenses. And they averaged about a touchdown more per game, or per season, not per game, per season than Evan Engram has. So I think that red zone usage gets bumped up like we kind of saw it was last season. The production is a lot better, and I think he can just get incredible volume in this offense. And there's so much potential there for being like that top 3 tight end guy, where other guys behind him, in my opinion, have a little less of that chance. So that next guy is TJ Hockenson, which he's had that in the past. I get. But I feel like we have looked too far into the past compared to his current situation, and it's really only gotten worse and worse each year. So 2 years ago, what happened? The Vikings drafted Jordan Addison. And since that point, when he had Jordan Addison and Justin Jefferson on the field, TJ Hockenson has been okay. Not very good. The touchdowns have been horrible, and unlike a lot of these other guys I've talked about with their touchdowns, it's not really a better situation. It's actually much worse. We look at those 2 years. His end zone targets in the games that Jefferson has missed is the same as the games that Jefferson has played. And Jefferson's been healthy for about 80% of those games. So you do the math. He's really only getting end zone targets when Jefferson isn't there. Addison is getting a ton of that red zone volume. So even though they throw a bunch and throw a lot in the red zone, it's a rare offense where they're not doing it really with the tight end. So last year he was coming off of injury. I get it. He was tight end 18. It's not like he was coming off of injury and was the tight end 10. He was tight end 18. And that was in an offense that had a dynamic passing attack, 2 really good receivers, yeah, and like Sam Darnold, a quarterback, but the production was there. And now, same situation, but with a rookie quarterback. I don't expect it to get that much better, and I feel like it's a guy where he's going to have to get a lot of touchdowns to pay off this ADP because I don't think the volume is there. I don't think the production in terms of his receptions and yards is really going to be there, especially with the risk of a rookie quarterback. And I don't think that the touchdowns are magically going to come around given his usage. So I'm surprised he's being drafted that high. I know a lot of people like him. I know he has a great pass, but that was mainly in Detroit and kind of that first stint half season in Minnesota. The next guy is Sam LaPorta. I don't really like him. It's pretty simple when it comes to him. He dropped by 3.2 points per game last season. Going from a rookie to a sophomore season, when he dropped by that much, it is a pretty big flag. Like, not to bring up like the extreme examples of like Chase Claypool, but that's where my mind kind of goes to. And he's solid. He finished as the tight end 9 last year, but there wasn't really any excuse. Everything was perfect. Everything. They had the number one offense. He scored a lot of touchdowns. He had the best offense coordinator in the NFL for tight ends, mainly, for the most part, one would say. And when we're looking at the other facts, he was just extremely overly efficient in terms of touchdowns. He ranked 25th in targets per route. Just a horrible metric. 25th in targets per route by a tight end. He was 18th in those first read targets. The one encouraging thing is that in the second half of the year, his targets did basically double. So he was getting a solid 7 targets per game. But last year, on that volume, he wasn't a top 3 tight end scoring a bunch of touchdowns. He had another good touchdown year in the number 1 scoring offense and was the tight end 9 in a year that he should have bumped up by a lot. So now you have a new offensive coordinator. You're having Gibbs get more slot work. You're having Jameson Williams be rumored of another bump in targets per year in general. So LaPorta, I don't really know where that production is coming. If it wasn't there last year on the volume, that's probably going to be the same, and the touchdowns are more likely to dip than increase. It's a confusing situation for me. I get that he was a tight end 1 overall, not in points per game that first year, but I just don't see why he's being drafted this high, being a guy that's like round 4 and 5 when you can get like stud RB1 level talents. Colston Loveland. Now, talking about Sam LaPorta, rookie year, there's a lot of comparisons because not only is he a rookie like Sam LaPorta was with Ben Johnson, but being drafted even higher, top 10 pick. Ben Johnson comes in, and usually when you're a new coach going into a situation, getting paid lots of money, you kind of have a little more power because they want to build this team around you per se. They had a lot of holes to fill. There was a lot of different things they could have done. And they drafted a tight end. When they have Cole Kmet, when they didn't really need one, and a top 10 pick on a guy that was a tight end. And yeah, his college production wasn't incredible, but that was because of his offense. And we're looking again at like those per route stats. Ridiculous. And he's insanely young for a prospect. They love him. Every single, like just Google Colston Loveland, and the first like 5 articles are just going to be like, Ben Johnson wants to take over as his father. Every single thing is just how much they love Colston Loveland, how he hasn't left the building, how he's going to be amazing this year. They can't wait to get him involved. And that's the thing is people are like, oh, well, he's a rookie. How can he get involved early? Go look at LaPorta in the first few games. It didn't take LaPorta this long amount of time to be productive his first year. And Colston Loveland, yeah, there's more, I wouldn't even say more competition around him. It's kind of the same as Detroit. He is more talented though. So I think the upside, as a guy that you're drafting this late in drafts, he has that top 3 upside. And it's not even insane to say that anymore looking at the past 2 years. Like this is where Brock Bowers is being drafted last year. This is Sam LaPorta finished as a tight end 1 being drafted as like tight end 25 with Ben Johnson in year 1. I don't think it's that insane to say. And when we're looking at the receiver room there, they have a lot of talent, but it's a lot of unknown in terms of volume. And I don't think that it's crazy to say that Colston Loveland will be getting a lot of slot work in that offense. I think he'll be more of a mix of Sam LaPorta and Amon-Ra compared to just playing the Sam LaPorta role. I think that's going to be more Cole Kmet. And also, just a little nug, is I saw today that most teams, when they list their starting depth chart, starting lineup, they list 3 receivers. The Bears listed 2 tight ends instead, with Colston Loveland being listed as a starter. So just saying, good note there. To round out this top 10, it's Tucker Kraft. And for me, he is a top 5 guy if he gets volume. It wasn't there last year. But when we're looking at the production compared to that volume, it's ridiculous. He was by far the best tight ends in yards after catch. He was 3rd in missed tackles forced behind those guys like a George Kittle. He was 2nd best in touchdowns over expected. Some that you would expect regression, but for a second-year tight end going into year 3 with his level of talent and more of an unknown in terms of where's the Packers volume going to go. And it's also possible that they throw the ball a lot more this year, given that Jordan Love is healthy again. So there's so many signs that if he gets volume, he can be ridiculous because he doesn't really need insanely good volume to be really productive. We saw that last year, but if we give him a little bit more this year, that's when he turns in from the tight end 10 to the tight end 3. People are going to be mad about this ranking, I'm sure, and I get it. He's Travis Kelce. He's the tight end 5 in ADP right now, which I think is utterly insane. I have him as tight end 11. I would love to see his ADP if Taylor Swift fans weren't allowed to draft, see how much that Taylor Swift tax really is, just for fun. But the reason I have him at 11 is he finished as tight end 7 last year without his volume decreasing, his production going down again, and highly benefiting off of the Rashee Rice injury. That like 8-9 game split of the end of 2023 to the start of 2024 before the Rice injury, he was getting like 5 targets per game and like 6 points per game. Like it wasn't even that he wasn't startable. He wasn't even like a top 20 tight end with Rashee Rice. So now Rice is back. Worthy kicked it up at the second half of the year, and we're expecting going into his 36-year-old birthday season that he's going to magically turn it around after dropping by nearly 20% in production back-to-back seasons. He was dead last in points per game over the expected last year, so if his volume stays the same, we would expect his production to still get worse, which was only tight end 7 last year, benefiting on Rashee Rice not being there. He would have been like the tight end 30 last year if Rashee Rice played all season. I just don't get where we're thinking the ceiling is coming from and drafting him in early rounds, the tight end 5. I don't understand. I don't get it. I will not be having a single share of his. There is not a sign in the world for me that makes me think that he is going to be better this year. That next guy is Dalton Kincaid, and he's such a confusing guy to rank. I could see myself being like, why did I rank him tight end 13 as a green at the end of the year for both him being the tight end 25 and being the tight end 1 overall? Like there's so much positive and so many like weird stats that makes it hard to rank. Injury is part of it. That those are wrenching things. The start of a preseason, if you're injured, it complicates stuff. But we're looking back at his year 1. Josh Allen was amazing for him. #1 catch rate, #1 accuracy to him. A lot of those per route stats were incredible. Some of the best in the business. Just wasn't running many routes as a rookie. Year 2, it was kind of more the same in terms of his snap share and his route share. The blocking is a question mark there. But everything else flipped on its head, sadly. The accuracy, for some reason, was horrible from Josh Allen just throwing to Kincaid. I don't know if it's a chemistry thing or what happened from year 1 to year 2. He was fine elsewhere, but it was more just bad luck, I think. In Dalton Kincaid, his catch rate also last, but in terms of his volume per route, #1 among tight ends. Like the potential is there. So say in year 3, that common tight end jump, he gets a higher snap share. He keeps that #1 per route volume, and he's that first round pick that we drafted 2 years ago. It's the most obvious ceiling in the world for a guy that's basically being undrafted in some drafts, just going super late as a tight end. He's got to be a little better of a blocker. He's got to have the trust, be used in the red zone a little bit more than what he has the first 2 years. But that tight end 2 to tight end 3 year is maybe the biggest of any position. And Dalton Kincaid, a former first rounder that's proven in multiple metrics that there is a ton of potential there for being not just a tight end 1, but the tight end 1 down the line. It's there. It's there. You just got to take the risk on a late pick. The next guy is Jake Ferguson, that cheap mid tight end 1 value. I don't think he has any tight end 1 potential down the line, years to come, anything like that. But if he was the tight end 5 this year, I would not be shocked. Some people would. I wouldn't be shocked. We look at this offense, they're going to be throwing the ball a lot. They don't have an offensive line, really. They don't really have any running backs. They don't have a defense. It's a lot of question marks. If Dak is in there, he has proven basically back-to-back years that he is a mid-level tight end 1. He was great in 2023. Last year, with Dak, he was the tight end 6 without touchdowns. They had a struggling offense early on, but the volume, #1 passing volume in the league with Dak Prescott, he benefited from that. He's a great guy in terms of those missed tackles, the yards after catch, which is huge for tight ends, finding those studs as who can make plays after the catch. He's one of those guys. And as a guy that got 0 touchdowns, some I'm like, oh, it's a red flag because they're not really touchdown score, not really being used that way. He is being used that way. He scored a ton of touchdowns in 2023. He scored 3 in 1 game in the NFL playoffs in 2023. He led the position in red zone targets. He gets a lot of those end zone targets. So an offense that has, yes, George Pickens and CD, but a lot of passing volume to go around, and being the tight end or being the third option on a team like that when there's going to be a lot of distractions for the defense to focus on, it's not a bad situation for him at all, especially with Dak's history of being able to throw those seam balls. A lot of that good tight end volume coming from Dak specifically is kind of his strength. So I really like it overall there. 15th, Kyle Pitts. I won't talk about it too much because I did a whole TikTok video on him. If you haven't seen it, just go check that out instead. I don't believe, sadly, anymore. He was a different guy as a rookie. He had 1,000 yards. He was amazing. Injuries have happened. Coaching has been horrible. He's at a point now where, yes, panic could be that switch for him, But we saw 3 games of it last year, and it was not only just bad, it was horrible. They barely played him. When he was being played, he didn't get targeted. He can't separate versus safeties downfield. I don't know if that's the injury Foley or what it is, but it just hasn't been there. And there's too many just like those minimal errors that add up on film that just make me not believe in him. He's also not a very good blocker. He's going to be taken off the field a little bit more. Bijan's getting a ton of receiving work out of the backfield. They have Mooney and Drake London outside, so it's not like they don't have weapons there. Like, I think he's the 4th option in a passing game with a new quarterback that I like a lot, but doesn't really fit Kyle Pitts super well compared to how it perfectly fits Drake London and Darnell Mooney. There's just too many question marks for me to be like, oh yeah, I love them like I do Dalton Kincaid and Jake Ferguson in this range. And quickly, the tight end 16 to 20. So we got Goddard at 16. If A.J. Brown or Devontae Smith is out for a game, he's a startable tight end, low-end tight end 1 guy. If both are out, he's like a top 3 guy, which is amazing, but obviously we don't want that to happen. If they're healthy like we want it to be, well, the last 2 years he's kind of proven that he's just like a low-end tight end 2, a great NFL player, but it's not in the situation to be a fantasy guy. Jonnu Smith, another one that I just have way below his ADP. He's being drafted as tight end 11, tight end 10 right now. I have him at 17th. He had double digits for the first time last year in Miami in a year where he was number 1 in expected points per route, number 1 in design targets. And now in year 8 or 9, he goes back to Arthur Smith with Aaron Rodgers. He's never had a 10-point per game season with him in like 5 years together. And they have Darnell Washington there. It's a horrible quarterback situation. Horrible passing offense in terms of the volume, in terms of his skill set, in terms of everything. Like, just because he's going to get a couple toss sweeps a game from Arthur Smith being insane doesn't really give him fantasy value. I don't really get why he's being drafted so high. Like, we've seen this year after year after year with him and Arthur Smith. Like, I don't know. Next is Henry and Strange. They're both low-end tight end 1s when they have been in their current situation, which makes them interesting. I kind of doubt their overall ceiling is why I still kind of have them this low. But Henry was like the tight end 12 with Drake May last year. Strange, without Evan Engram last year, was also a low-end tight end 1. So they have that good upside, but when we're looking at their offenses, Patriots probably low passing volume overall. They have Diggs there. They have Kyle Williams now and Douglas there. They have Travion Henderson. It's a little crowded in terms of guys being just like solid. And then Jacksonville, obviously a little more there. We got ETN out of the backfield, which affects him, but also Hunter and BTJ on the outside. So I don't know if they'll be huge impact fantasy guys, but they're good long shots. If you play in a very deep league and are interested in 20 to 30, I have that in my draft guide. Go check it out for all the other reasons. I appreciate you guys watching, and I'll see you soon.